welcome to the My Life Counts podcast, where we talk about anything dealing with mental health. My name is Jared Jones. I'm your mental health coach, and today we're going to talk about this buzzword called coping skills. And I know many of you probably heard about coping skills before. Matter of fact, you probably went online and got the list of 99 coping skills, and so we're going to talk about coping skills today. We're going to talk about what it is, what they are, what they are not, and how do we develop them? All right, and what do they use for? And so, first off, you know me, I like to get a working definition so that we all know what we're talking about. So when we're talking about coping skills, there's two definitions, and I want to go over these two definitions because I think it's important for us to kind of establish where we are. So the first definition, and this is the definition that I like to use, and it's a state of harmony between internal needs and external demands, and the process used in achieving this condition. All right, now I like that definition, and that's the definition that I'm going to use, but I want to talk a little bit about this other definition, and that's any characteristic or behavioral pattern that enhances a person's adaptation. Now, most times people, when they talk about coping skills, they're talking about it in a positive way, right? Anytime you hear about coping skills, it's positive. Well, there's a problem there because we have to talk about what are coping skills. Coping skills aren't always positive. All right. Now, as being in the mental health field for over 20 years, I always encourage people to find positive coping skills. But the reality is, people use drugs as a coping skill. People cuss people out as a coping skill. People fight as a coping skill. All right. So these are all coping skills. Coping skills are not negative coping skills aren't only positive. All right, so you can't have negative coping skills. Now, the goal, obviously, is to have positive coping skills, coping skills that are productive, coping skills that are going to help you, coping skills that's not going to end you up in jail. All right, so the goal is to have positive coping skills, but I want to make this distinction that coping skills are anything that you use to cope is a coping skill. So we're going to stick with this definition: a state of harmony between internal needs and external demands, and the process used in achieving this condition. All right. Now, so what are they? Well, we've already defined what coping skills are, right? So what aren't they? Well, here's the thing. A lot of times, like I mentioned before, you come across that list of 99 coping skills, and you ever hear like, why don't you just take a walk or count to 10, or you have all these brilliant ideas of coping skills. Well, they are not a one size fit all. They're not 100%. They're not what the coping skills that work for me may not work for you. And the coping skills that work for me in one situation may not work for me in another situation, right? So they're not a one size fit all. That's why it's important to have many coping skills, because sometimes, the coping skill that you've gone to before may not work anymore. And so you may have to go find another one, just depending on the situation. Now, why are they important? Well, I like to break down coping skills in two categories. All right. One is a distraction, and I'll talk a little bit about that. But two is a release. Now let's talk a little bit about the distractions. Okay. Because distractions are just that. They're a distraction from whatever's going on. Okay. And they are needed because sometimes you just going through a situation and the overall, overwhelming situation is just overwhelming you, and so you need some time to just be able to back away and distract yourself, right? So maybe going for a walk, maybe listening to some music, maybe doing something, but can distract you from the situation, right? And it just depends on what the situation is. Now, why is the distraction important? Because the distraction allows you to get to a level-headed place, right? It allows you to get to a place to where now all of a sudden you can think through whatever the situation is. You can think through the problem. You can get to a level ground. You can find some kind of balance, some kind of center. All right. So that's what distractions do. It doesn't get rid of the problem. All right. Now, I mean, because the reality is once you're done with the distraction, once you're done using that coping skill, once you're done going for that walk or whatever it is, you come back to the exact same situation, and the situation has never left. But hopefully you can come back to it with new eyes. Hopefully you can come back to it with a new mindset. And that allows you to be able to think through whatever the situation is and think differently from it. Okay. Sometimes you just need to take your mind away from the problem so that you can find a different perspective for the problem. All right. So that's why distractions are important. All right. So I don't want to like demean the distractions because they are needed. Now, the other type that I look at, I call it it's kind of a release. All right. And these are coping skills that actually reduce your stress. They actually allow things to get out you. If you can think of it as a balloon and you're stressed out and you got so much going on and the balloon is so full, then these are the coping skills that allows air to come out of the balloon before it pops. Okay. So these are, when you lash out at somebody and you want to fight them and you physically lash out at them and you start punching and swinging and all that stuff, that lets stuff out. Now, it may not be as positive as we want. And so we have to look at other things that can do the same thing, but is more positive. So exercise is a great one. Writing is a really good tool to do this. Music, have you ever cut on music and just listened to it or sung with it and screamed with it, and that allows you to release. Okay, it allows the pressure to come down. And so I look at coping skills in those two categories: the distractions and there's releases, and both of them are needed. And just depending on how severe the situation is, you may need one, you may need the other, you may need both. So you need to develop some positive coping skills. Now, how do you develop these coping skills? Well, trial and error, honestly, because I can give you a list of 100 coping skills and none of them may work for you, or one of them may work at one time and then another one may work at another time, but you really don't know. So it's a part of knowing yourself, and it's a part of trial and error, just going through trying different coping skills, trying different things. And as you're trying these things, seeing what works and what doesn't work. Okay, well, I tried to count to 10. It doesn't work. All right, well, what if I counted to 100? Nah, I'm a snap by the time I get to 20. So nah, that don't work. Or, hey, you know what? Counting to 10 really worked. I just had to count to 10 really slow. And as I counted to 10, I started, by the time I got to 7, I was feeling better. And by the time I got to 10, I was in a really good place. Okay, fine. So it works for you in that situation. But understand, all coping skills aren't created equal, and they're definitely not equal depending on the situation. So each situation is different, and it may require new coping skills. And so you always want to be looking out for coping skills and looking out for things that you can do to have better and more appropriate coping skills that are positive. But do remember this: anything that you do is a coping skill. All right. So evaluate the coping skills that you have now, the things that you do now to get through this situation, and ask yourself, what is it providing you? Is it a distraction or is it a release? And if it's a release, well, what other things can I use to supplement that release? And if it's a distraction, what other things can I use to distract myself in these situations? And so those are some things about coping skills. All right. So Again, I know coping skills is a buzzword now, especially when everybody's talking about mental health, which is a good thing. But I wanted to throw those things out about coping skills. So you can always check us out on mylc-mentalhealthcoach.com. Definitely sign up for our newsletter and check out some of the things that we're doing. And you can always check out the podcast, the My Life Counts podcast. We will continue. We drop shows every Monday and Thursday of each week. So we'll see you on next show. Peace.